College of Health and Behavioral Sciences, we will be participating, and we have partnered with an MOU with the Hope Commission to provide research and analysis for their HEAT program, the HEAT study that they have, a random clinical trial. This is very near and dear to me. Some people may know, others may not. I am an ex-convicted felon. 1992, I was convicted of a Rule 9 drug charge. As a result of that, in 1999, Ruth Ann Minner, who was lieutenant governor at the time, granted me a pardon. And I will tell you, it was with the help of God, family, Delaware State University, as well as just family and friends providing me hope and support. And I was able to get a second chance here in Delaware in 1999. And I also worked in every prison statewide by training. I'm a forensics clinical psychologist. And I also worked in the forensic unit. So I'm now back serving my illustrious university with this particular work as well. Thanks.
So you put your jersey back on. How y'all doing? My name is Devin Hawks. I just completed the Hope. I was just completed my reentry in the Hope program, and I was a part of the heat therapy empowerment. You know, and I just completed it and everything, and
congratulations.
You know, getting back. Congratulations. Getting back rehabilitated and starting over and get myself together.
Thank you for coming out.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tara Taylor. I am the Commissioner of the Delaware Department of Correction. I'm also a Delaware native. I've been with the Department of Correction for approximately 27 years. I started off as a young 19-year-old college intern, and then shortly after that, I became a probation and parole officer and had the opportunity to move up through the ranks at the Department of Correction. Very passionate about the Department of Correction, passionate about serving our community, passionate about sharing all the good work that we're doing, and just spending some time here today. Thank you for the opportunity to share the stage and be part of the discussion.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Morning.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Jessica Klein from the Department of Correction. I'm the Deputy Chief of the Office of Planning, Research, and Reentry that was created under Governor Carney's Executive Order 27 in 2018. So I've been with the department also 27 years. The majority of that, about the last 15 years, working on the reentry efforts that have been initiated by the last two governors' administrations. So first under Governor Markell and then under Governor Carney. So I oversee most of the statewide reentry reform and improvement efforts within the DOC and work with multiple other state and community partners to provide services and connections to care post-release in the community.
So while we're talking to services and we're keeping up with the topic of the panel, we'll go through and we'll have, if everybody could keep them brief because we're a little bit behind in schedule, but to be able to talk to exactly what it is, and I'm curious, you know, the Department of Corrections, when I hear Department of Corrections, I think of corrections, right? I don't hear hope. I don't put corrections and hope in the same sentence sometimes. But what is it, what are you all doing as an organization, mandated legislatively or otherwise, that is helping incarcerated folks that are transitioning out, ease in that transition?
I'll start us off, and then Jessica, you can help me with filling in any blanks that I may miss. And hopefully that narrative changes, especially when we start sharing information and sharing more data. I say a lot of times that the Department of Correction that we are today is very different from the Department of Correction that we were 27 years ago. We've really embraced an evidence-based approach and individualized supervision to how we interact with those that are being housed at our level 5, level 4 facilities, or that are being supervised out in the community on probation or parole. And for the most part, that starts off with using an evidence-based risk needs assessment that really lets us drill down onto what are the true needs of that individual. Because I heard earlier some folks talking about mental health needs. If we don't address the root problem, we're gonna have a hard time helping individuals sustain employment or stay clean. So using those risk needs assessment is something that has really helped us transition. And like I said, we use it at our level 5 and level 4 facility. And we also use it to help us match programs. So unique programs to their needs, and programs that the evidence tells us will help reduce their risk of recidivism when they enter back into the community. What we've seen, the data that we've seen since we've introduced a lot of these changes has been very hopeful. When we talk about recidivism, for the past 2 years, our return to prison recidivism has been under 10%. That's huge. 5 years ago, we were around 20%. So since we have adopted some of this more recent reform, evidence-based practices, we're starting to see those outcomes. Our probation and parole population has almost been cut in half. In 1999, shortly when I started at probation and parole, our population was around 20,000 on community supervision. Today, we're averaging around 10,000 to 11,000. That's huge.
Would you consider some of that to be just for low-level drug offenses, that is being no longer a crime, such as marijuana and things like that? So it's stopped a lot of these people that had stop and frisk and other type of infringements, that they were being sent back to the penitentiary because of those things that are no longer law-breaking issues.
It has been a gradual decline, so I am assuming that's because of some of the practices that we've put in place in the reform efforts that have already been made, from shorter sentences, our caps on probation sentences, the ability for a Department of Correction to be able to use graduated responses to low-level technical violations versus filing a violation of probation report or arresting somebody and returning them to level 5. We now have that ability to address those non-compliance in the community to help coach and redirect. So I think some of those factors have really helped us kind of change that narrative. Some of the other initiatives that we've really introduced in our level 5 and level 4 facilities, or have expanded upon, is our vocational skills training. I heard some talk about DCI and our furniture reupholstery. We also offer CDL certifications in 2 of our facilities. We have culinary arts. We have a vocational skills program that's 5 days, and they get 5 certifications in those 5 days. We have welding. We have construction. We just opened up, just this week, we just finished construction, the end of 2023, of our vocational skills training building at James T. Vaughn. And just this week, we started our very first construction class in that building. And the concept is to take the model that Delaware Skills Center has and bring it to our facilities, so those under our supervision can earn those skills and get those certifications prior to release.
I think that's great. So when we're talking about things that are going on inside the prison, Devin, I'm very curious to know, as someone who is just getting out and going through all of the process, well, not all of the processes, but some of the things that the state has and the state is sponsoring to benefit you in certain programs, I would really like to know your perspective as, what's the hope there? Are you feeling positive about this transition? How are the services?
Honestly, I feel like, I went to the Hope Commission, and they really helped me a lot. I feel like we need more of that, honestly, because it kind of made me look at the way I look at everything around me differently. The way I go about my life day by day, how I react to even the way I do with my children. Like, it kind of digs into me, digs into my mentally and my mental health, and shows me maybe I could change this thing about myself. Maybe I could do this differently. Maybe I could think about something before I act, because it takes 5 seconds and it can change your life forever. And a lot of people don't understand that we don't have these outlets or programs, and we end up right back because we don't know anything else, or we don't change the way we're thinking, or we don't change our mindsets. And it's hard for us to go back through it. So I was in the HEAT program, kind of helped me a lot for it. And it was kind of tedious and things, but it made me look at myself in the mirror, honestly. Because there's a lot of things I learned, I was really that way, or I really think that way, or maybe I should change the way I think, or maybe I should do this. It helps a lot, and I feel like we need more of it.
So did somebody grab you when you got out? Who was it that made sure, or
No,
Did you do this on your own? Or
I was in a level 4 facility, and I met someone that was in the Hope Commission program. And I started out to want to do it because it was, you get done early as long as you keep the 4 pillars of keeping a consistent job, having stable living, no new charges, and clean urine. I can get on probation early. So my whole thing, I'm like, well, cool, I'm looking at probation early, I'm trying to get out of the way. But being in that program, I learned a lot more about myself and ways I can help me and help people around me by just, trying to get on probation early kind of turned into something else that helped me in the long run.
So nothing like an incentive to make you do the right thing. And
Absolutely.
Straight and narrow. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Sincere, I'm curious with the state of Virginia, what are you seeing different than what's going on there versus what we're doing here and bringing that hope in?
So just as a bit of a qualifier, I also spent 24 years in prison from 18 to 42. I've been home for 2 years now. And what I'm becoming more and more aware of across the nation, I've gone all over the country, from California, Texas, New York, Florida, Georgia, like all over the country, discussing reentry and the processes of reentry. And what I've noticed is that a lot of people face reentry from a perspective of the system is broken. How many people in here right now are under the understanding that the system is broken? Raise your hand. All right, so I'm gonna push back on it a little bit. These systems were designed by very intelligent people. Very intelligent people put these systems in place. They're operating and functioning in the exact way they were meant to operate and function. So as long as we continue to operate and think in that same way that, okay, we need to fix the system, then we're always gonna be sitting in rooms like this having these exact same discussions. Because we're trying to fix something that was never broken in the first place. I need you to kind of mull that over a little bit and think about how these systems were put in place, how they were designed, who designed them, and why. They function in the exact way they were meant to function. So what I've seen is once we come to that mindset and say, you know what, we're not looking to fix a broken system. We're looking to reform a system. Restructure it completely, uproot it, and restructure the system completely. The reason why we don't talk about mental health and substance use disorders and all and poverty and lack of education and opportunities is because those are things that were structurally put in place as collateral consequences for individuals in certain communities to not be productive, to make you to divest out of these specific communities, so that we have these problems that persist and prevail. So it's hard for me to assess a system or even a philosophy that by design is doing exactly what it was supposed to do. So I don't look at it from a perspective of what is different in this state and that state. They're all pretty much the same, unless we step away from the idea and the philosophy that the system is broken. Please.
Thank you. Dr. Jones, tell us a little bit about your program, a little bit more, and how you're bringing hope to.
Well, it's actually not just Delaware State University's program. We're going to be providing the research and the data analysis. We also have a trauma academy. We're going to be working with the individuals at the Hope House as well. But I'd be remiss if I did not ask Mr. Guy Willer, the founder, one of the co-founders of the HEAT study intervention, if he could stand up and be seen. I read this as a cognitive behavioral therapist and looked at the orientation of HEAT. And this program was very culturally relevant to African Americans as well. And it also allowed them, it's like a 36-module program, and it will also touch on intergenerational trauma as well with the individuals, which is actually had been missing in a lot of intervention and approaches. It's my hope that in partnership with the Hope Commission, that Delaware State University can help the Hope Commission expand this program statewide. And then it's my hope that we can eventually make it to Sussex County as well. I've worked in the prison system well over 15 years, and I will say that this is cutting edge. This is a cutting edge program, especially for African American males, more specifically African Americans, period, who have been incarcerated.
So Commissioner, you're hearing this firsthand, your thoughts?
What I'm hearing, and I heard it from Mr. Hawks, what you kind of explained with your experience is kind of the foundation of that cognitive behavioral therapy model. You pointed out that you changed the way you thought, and then when you changed the way you thought, you changed the way you behaved and the choices that you made. That's the foundation of CBT. And that's what the evidence is showing us that works. So when we talk about using evidence-based to help drive how we supervise or how we classify or how we place individuals in programs, that's what's going to give us the return on investment. And I truly believe that that's why we're starting to see the needle move in a positive direction. And like the doctor mentioned, expansion of programs like CBT is our goal as well. And that's one of the reasons, and it's one of the benefits of using our risk needs assessments now at all of our, at level 5, at level 4 in probation. It gives us the ability to be able to identify those needs and match those programs accordingly. You can do damage by over-supervising, you can do damage by over-programming, you can do damage by under-supervising, you can do damage by under-programming. You need that match, and that's what using the evidence to really help us identify those needs and match those programs. That's what works, that's what the evidence shows us what works, and that's what we're really hoping to be able to expand.
Database decisions are.
Yep, she's absolutely right. Mr. Hawks is an example of what we call utilizing cognitive reframing and cognitive restructuring with the CBT approach, with the HEAT program.
And then when you also incorporate, I talked a little bit earlier about our use of graduated responses now that probation and parole has as a tool in our tool belt. It's incentives, it's sanctions. We can reward somebody for doing something good. He or she may participate in a program, maybe they complete, maybe it's just showing up from day one of that program, because that alone is extremely overwhelming. We can incentivize that behavior, and then they say, oh, if I do that, this is the reward that I get, and it encourages it. So it's both incentives and sanctions. And I think cumulatively, those are the things that are really making a difference. The partnerships that we have in the community is huge. Getting the community to understand the population that we're dealing with and not allow their fear to interfere with their ability to help. And maybe their intentions are good by excluding some individuals from specific resources or programs, but the community as a whole is what's going to be damaged.
Speaking of the community, it's that time for Q&A right now. So we're going to keep it to 2 questions. Do we have the same person with the mic this time?
I'm right here.
All right, there we go. So who has a question for the board now in regards to?
Right here. He's right.
Right here. Go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I have a question for Jessica and Tara. I want to know, through your risk assessment, are you gathering data on how many people getting released are identifying housing insecurity? And second, do you have data on how many beds are available for transitional housing for reentrants?
Very good question. I'll let Deputy Chief Klein take this one because she's been working on this.
So I'll start with your housing question. We have just recently been able to really quantify some of the housing and housing insecurity data. So a few years back, we added some checkpoints into our case management system so we can actually start to pull that data. So we're working on getting complete years of it. But what we're looking at now is housing coming in, housing approximately 6 months pre-release, just to get an assessment of if we have some housing insecurity or homelessness, and then housing at release. So we just evaluated a year of data, 2022, and that's coming out. So we do have some of that housing and housing insecurity data. Again, that's self-report, but most housing situations are going to be self-report. And can you repeat the second half of your question again?
do you have, I worked in housing through a reentry nonprofit for years, and unfortunately it's shuttered. And I just know there's a great need. I run into a lot of people that are coming home. I served 20 years. It was hard for me to find a place with a cosign. And I'm not aware of very many transitional housing programs in Delaware currently. And I want to know if you have data on how many beds there are for people coming home.
Right, so we don't have the number of beds available. I think that might fall more under Housing Alliance Delaware. But most of the beds are sober living beds, which you probably are aware of. There's some mental health housing, probably not enough for people with mental health issues, medical issues, ambulatory issues. They're all in short supply. Housing is our biggest challenge by far, and we do everything we can to try to find suitable housing before release to bridge that gap. Up until recently, we had some federal grant funding that would help us pay for emergency housing while we could find more sustainable, and that has since expired, so we're relying on some of our community partners that have funding to help place individuals. But we also face the same barriers a lot of people do with, they see a history or record, or they're coming out of DOC, and sometimes that poses challenges too.
Okay, do you want to move on to the next?
I'm ready.
Hi, my name's Kim Jones. I have a couple of notes here, so bear with me, but I wanted to touch on some of the collateral consequences that the gentleman on the end talked about. So I've been out of prison since 2014. I unfortunately had some federal charges, so in Delaware, I can't get an expungement. On the federal level, I can't get an expungement. The best I can do is a presidential pardon, and that's not the same. These collateral consequences extend for years and for our lifetime. So we do keep an X on our chest as we go throughout society, always. So perfect example, both my kids live in Wyoming. They go to college out there. They recently wanted to get an apartment, and I had to co-sign for it. I can pay their rent for the entire year, and they got denied because their mother has a felony conviction. So my kids are getting punished for something that I did 12, 13 years ago. I give the BOP a 0 out of 5 stars. If none of you have ever been there, please don't go, not the place. I also was denied entry to a university in Delaware. So I worked in the substance abuse field since 2014 and applied into a clinical mental health counseling program. I was told by the university that they wouldn't accept me because the licensing board might not approve me for licensure. So instead of advocating for me and saying this is the perfect example of somebody who's transformed their life and can help others transform theirs as well, they said, no, you're too much of a risk. So it's not just the expungement process that's beneficial to people, it's not just the housing that's beneficial to people, but we need to look at the long-term consequences that people like myself and everybody else with a conviction is dealing with as well. So my question is, what are we doing about those collateral consequences and not just the immediate needs of people?
Does anybody in here, can anybody here tell me how many collateral consequences there are for an individual convicted of a felony? Just to throw a number out there, wild guess. 7. How many? 46,000. 46,000 collateral consequences for individuals convicted of a felony. So, for example, I'm a new father, and one of those collateral consequences is I can't, for something I did 27 years ago, I can't chaperone a field trip. Something I was convicted of at age of 18, and I received a pardon in Virginia. I earned a pardon in Virginia. So just thinking about that, I couldn't find housing. The top 3 things that an individual needs to reacclimate themselves successfully into society, especially after long-term incarceration: housing, employment, education. Those 3 things are blocked. We have barriers to that. Y'all call it an X on your chest, as Wallow said. We call it an F in our report card. With that F, when you bring home your report card to your parents, your mom and dad, you can have straight A's. What are they going to focus on? That F. The same thing goes housing, education, and employment. They don't care if it was 25, 30, 40 years ago. The one area that is legal to discriminate, in Virginia especially, to discriminate against a person is if you have a felony on your record and housing. Housing. The one, if I have nowhere to live, I'm in violation of my probation. I'm on parole right now. I'm in violation of my parole if I can't find housing. And it's up to me. When I was released, they said, all right, look, figure it out. Literally, like Waldo said, go figure it out. 24 years in, 18 years old. I've never been an adult in society. You tell an 18-year-old kid, because in my mind, it's like I'm stepping right back out as 18 years old, fresh start, trying to figure it out. I did 37 different programs. I have all this, I'm a peer recovery, peer support specialist. You know what he told me? Yeah, you were that inside. You were certified to do that inside. But out here, the Department of Behavior Health Services said, no. You're not using that skill set out here. So, once again, barrier crimes is another collateral consequence for employment. So now you have housing and employment that you're completely blocked against in its lifetime. There's no cap on that. Once again, a system that is not broken, that was by design. Very intelligent people implemented that protocol.
Erwin, I was told we had time for one more.
Excuse me, before we move on, I'd like to have the young lady to speak with me afterwards about your educational needs. I'll tell you that your occasion is not your conclusion.
I do have a question. I'm Bishop Coy Stewart, New Life Ministries Unlimited and Life Recovery Solutions. My question really is pertaining to the first part of the panel where you indicated that we were going to talk about barriers to reentry or to reacclimating. None of those barriers were mentioned. I'd like to know what does the data say are the chief barriers? I did hear our brother just say housing, education, and employment. But what are the dynamics of barriers that prevent a person who's reentering from normalizing? And secondly, what is the social/spiritual dynamic that impacts that situation? For Life Recovery Solutions, we also do transitional housing.
Can we work on answering those questions during our open lunch? So I'm not pushing you off. I just have to make sure that we're all getting out there on time and this is the time for lunch. But during lunch, we're actually going to have a panel and we will start the panel by answering those questions.
Thank you.